Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to walk you through step-by-step configuration of AWS Cognito authentication that allows securely access a wide range of AWS resources. In this video, though, we'll specifically focus on AWS S3 and Redshift. For those of you who is not quite familiar with AWS Cognito, Cognito is one of the AWS native identity provider services that allows organizations to centrally manage identity and access rights for individual organizations' users. Authentication with AWS Cognito enables secure user sign-in and seamless access of AWS resources. This configuration relies on two subcomponents or sub-resources, if you like. Those are user and identity pools. Cognito user pools handle authentication, user management, and federation with external identity providers, while identity pools provide temporary AWS credentials mapped to authenticated users. This approach simplifies access control and enhances security and scales easily across organizations. Additionally, if you're an Alteryx user, I'm going to demonstrate how to create a new connection from Alteryx Designer and access your S3 or Redshift data using this configuration, this authentication method. Whether you're just starting with AWS, by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to configure resources to give your individual users secure fine-grained access control to AWS resources. So let's dive in. During the course of this video, we'll configure the following Cognito resources. We'll start with creating a new user pool, and user pool is just a directory, represents a directory of users used within the organization. Then we'll create a new auth client, which will exist within the user pool and allow individual pool users to authenticate and get credentials. We'll also create a new user pool user whose identity we'll use to authenticate. Once done with the user pool, we'll create a new identity pool. An identity pool, as you remember, is used to issue a temporary set of credentials, access credentials for individual AWS services. We'll also create a new AWS IAM role that will have required permissions to access individual AWS services. For the purposes of this video, we'll primarily focus on S3 and Redshift services. And finally, once done with the configuration, we'll access our S3 and Redshift resources data from Alteryx Designer. Let's take a look at how this works. So here I'm on my AWS homepage, and I'll start with navigating to my Cognito console. Here in the Cognito console, I can just go here to a burger menu, and here I have my user pools and my identity pools I have configured. So if I navigate to the user pool, and as you remember, the step number one for us is to create a new Cognito user pool. So I'm going to click on this button here. Then I'll be prompted to specify to start with creating a new auth application that will be attributed to this user pool, and this auth application will be used to allow our users to authenticate into the user pool. So here I will just change the name of this auth application to Cognito user pool application. Next, I need to configure some of the sign-in options for the users. Specifically, I need to specify which attributes the users will be prompted to provide in order to sign in into the user pool. In my case, I'll just keep things simple, and I'll basically tell Cognito to send in users only with using the email addresses. And I'll select the user's preferred email address as a sign-in option here on the attributes as well. And finally, I need to specify the return URL. This value is also known as the redirect URL in Alteryx or OAuth context. And this value shall be set to be to the following format: HTTP localhost, and then you need to specify the port number that you want to use for authentication sessions. In my case, you'll just use the port 5010. It's important to note that you need to copy and save this value somewhere here. So here I have my cheat sheet, if you like, where I have listed all the required parameters I need to compile during the session. Right, now that I have provided initial configuration to my auth application, I can just create a new user directory. And here I'm getting a message saying the Cognito user pool application has been created and it has been attributed for the user pool AX, some default name here, AX for error. So if I now navigate to the user pools, I can see that my new user pool has been created. While being on this page, there is yet another value that I can locate and use that will be essential for us to authenticate into the user pool, and this value is the user pool ID. The user pool ID essentially can be extracted from this token signing key URL value that you see in here. So if you just copy this value, open it in a new tab, and just delete this well-known /JBKeys JSON prefix to it. So this value, essentially the Cognito US East in this case, because the Cognito instance is located, has been created in the US East zone. And this value here is essentially the ID of my Cognito user pool. Once again, what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this value and save it in my cheat sheet, which I'll use later when creating a connection from Alteryx Designer to my S3 and Redshift instances. Now that this step is done, I will go ahead and create a new user that I want to attribute to this user pool. So I'm going to do now, I can either create an import job and essentially use, let's say, a CSV document with a list of the users to be imported into it. You can also SAML users from external identity providers as well if you want to. I mean, this setup is fairly flexible. Alternatively, you can also create an identity federation between, let's say, your AWS Cognito user pool and your Azure Active Directory or Okta directory or any other external IDP you want to use there. However, for the purposes of simplicity, here I'll just create a user manually. So I'll create a new user. I do not want to send the user an invitation. I'll give a user I'll specify the user's email here. I'll mark this user's email as verified. I do not really want to set up a phone number here. I can also set up some sort of a default password in here. So I'll just go ahead and type it in. And yeah, I think we are all good. I'll create a user. And as you can see, my new user has now been created, as is this. To create a new identity pool, we'll need to navigate back to the Amazon Cognito homepage and then navigate to identity pools. And we click create a new identity pool. And for the user access type, we use authenticated access. And for the authenticated identity sources, we select Amazon Cognito user pool because we will rely on the Cognito user pool to authenticate users, and only those users who are authenticated via this specific user pool will be able to obtain the temporary credentials, which will be issued by this identity pool. Then we click next, and now we need to either create a new IAM role that will assign with required permissions for us to access individual resources, or we can use an existing role. In my case, and for the purposes of this video, I'll just go ahead and create a new role. So I'll call it Cognito S3 role. I'll attribute required permissions to this role at the later step. I do not need to review any policy documents here. I think this is all looking good. We need to also select the user pool that will be used for authentication. And in here, we're saying that the user pool is this user pool that we created in the earlier step. And within the user pool, you may have multiple applications, and there is like a many-to-many relationship in terms of, let's say, having one user pool and multiple applications, and each of these applications within the user pool could grant different level of access. So in our case, we'll also specify this application. We only have one application. We'll specify this application as the one that shall be recognized as the issuer, as an application that issues correct and authentic credentials that to the identity pool, so that the identity pool could validate and recognize those. I'll keep the remaining attributes at their default values and click next. And now I need to provide the identity pool with a name, so I'll call it Cognito S3 identity pool. I don't want to activate the basic authentication flow, that's fine. And yeah, everything I need to do now is just to click create a new identity pool. Wonderful. Right here, we can already see yet another attribute that's available to us. It's basically the identity pool ID. And if you take a look at this cheat sheet that we use in here, identity pool ID is indeed one of the required attributes we need to collect. Now let's go ahead and create the remaining attributes we have at this point in time. So we need to collect the AWS region and the AWS account ID. Which is fantastic. So the AWS region for our user and identity pool is US East 1, which is a default, which is perfect. So call it US East 1. And we need to collect the AWS account ID. So I'm going to account ID and we'll save it right here. Okay. Another attribute I'm still missing is client ID and client secret. And client ID and client secrets are the ID and the secret of the OAuth application that we registered in our user pool. To get those values, we need to navigate to the app client into here. And here right away, we see the client ID. Now I need to locate the client secret. To locate a client secret for this application, I go into client secret, and here underneath the client ID value, you see the client secret that you can just copy, and we'll just paste this value in here for now. Great. Something else I need to locate is Cognito domain URI. Cognito domain URI can be located by navigating to the user pool, and here at the bottom we see this domain. So if we click on the domain tab, we can locate the domain URI of our AWS Cognito user pool. Sweet. Now that we are done with this, we can say that we have created a new identity pool, and we need now to complete the last step, which would be granting the role assigned to the identity pool required permissions to access resources. This is a step that we haven't completed yet. So to do that, we'll navigate to the IAM console. So here I have my IAM console. I'll locate the role that we have just created. And you remember that this role is created, is called Cognito, Cognito S3 role. And it does not really have any specific permissions yet. So we have just opened this role now, and we go ahead and can either create an inline policy for this role and assign the permissions in line, or just attach one of the existing policies. For the sake of simplicity, I'll just go ahead and attach the S3 full access permissions, but you obviously can just go ahead, create a new policy with a more granular access permission rights, and then use this policy and assign it to the specific role if you like. So I'll give this role permissions to access the S3 buckets, and I will also go ahead and assign this role with the Redshift policy as well, because I want to use the same role to access the Redshift resources. So here I have my Amazon Redshift full access policy. So I go ahead and add these permissions to the role, and now we have granted the role that is assigned to the identity pool. with permissions to access both S3 and Redshift resources. And the way this is going to work is that our user will authenticate into Cognito first. We'll obtain the access and ID token from that of that Cognito user, and then we'll exchange that ID token of the Cognito user pool user for a set of temporary credentials against the Cognito identity pool. Hope this all makes sense. If you'd like to learn more about this, please visit the AWS documentation. Check the AWS documentation where they elaborate in a greater level of detail on this specific topic. Okay, now that we're done with this, let's move ahead and finally validate that our configuration works as intended and that we're able to access our S3 bucket from within Alteryx Designer using this authentication method. All right, let's take a look at how this works and how we can read our S3 data from Alteryx Designer using AWS Cognito authentication. So here I have my new Alteryx Designer workflow, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to just drop one of the tools here. So, for example, this will be Amazon S3 download tool. So I'm going to select the Use Data Connection Manager and click on Set Up a Connection. Now that I have done this, I'm going to create a new set of credentials. I'll keep all these values as a default. I do not need to change anything here. And I'll connect the credentials. And for the list of authentication, from the list of authentication method, I'm going to use AWS OAuth with identity pool for S3 as authentication method. I'm going to create a new set of credentials here, and here I'll be prompted to specify the Cognito domain URI. Paste this value into here. Then I need to specify the redirect URI of our OAuth application, which we created in the earlier stage, and it will be this value right here. Next, I need to specify the AWS region, and the AWS region I have configured on my end is US East 1. I need to also specify the AWS account ID, and the AWS account ID is right here. So I'm just going to continue filling out all those individual values, which we've already collected when creating the user and identity pools. So the user pool ID will be this value right here. And identity pool ID will be this value right here. Client ID will be this here, and this will be our client secret. Wonderful. I'll also need to name this credential. So I'll do this. I'll call it S3 Cognito credentials. And I'll create a new set of credentials that I'll call in exactly the same way. Wonderful. So now I have configured my authentication method. I attributed to the S3. I'll go ahead and click Create a Link. And if I now navigate to okay, I just realized that I potentially have mistyped the ID of my user pool, which is okay. I can navigate back to Cognito here, and you see I should have just removed this HTTP from the ID of the identity pool of the user pool. So I'll just go ahead and remove this value from here, and this value without HTTPS represents the ID of my Cognito user pool. Wonderful. Now that I'm done with this, I can just go in here, and I see that these are my credentials. And yeah, I think we should be good to go. Let's click Connect. And now we're being redirected to the AWS Cognito authentication page. Here I need to type in the name of the user, the email of the user that I'm using to sign in. Also provide the password that I attributed the user with. Okay, I'm prompted to reset a password, okay, because this is the first sign in. So I'm going to do that right away. Now I click change password, and I can get this. I'm getting this message: authentication granted, and voila, we're able to locate the specific bucket that we created, and now we can browse data within this bucket, which is the one of these PNG docs located in there. Now that we're done with creating a new S3 connection, let's take a look how we can access some of the Redshift data using this authentication method. So I'm going to create a new workflow here, and I will drop a new input tool on a canvas. So I'll drop an input tool. Once again, I'll use Data Connection Manager. I'll then navigate to Data Sources tab, locate Amazon Redshift, and select this Quick Connect option. I will create a new data source. I'll call it AWS Cognito Redshift. I'll provide the subname, which is basically the name of my the host of my Redshift instance. I have this conveniently prepared here on the side. Remove this bit here. I'll keep the port to be 5439, and I'll set the database name to be dev. Great. Now that I provided provide specification of my AWS Redshift instance, I need to go ahead and select authentication method. Here I have this option, AWS IAM with identity pool. I can either select one of the credentials I had previously created, or I can just create a new set of credentials. For the purpose of this demo, I will once again go ahead and create a new set of credentials. I'll call it AWS Redshift credentials. Redshift with Cognito credentials. I will once again be prompted to specify the Cognito domain URI. I have these values copied in here. Yeah, it's not really this value. I do apologize. The Cognito domain URI is the one that we, as we said, can locate by going to the user pool and then going to the domain section here. And here is my domain URI. So I switch back to Alteryx Designer. So I'll specify the domain URI, then I need to specify the HTTP, the redirect URI. As we remember, we set it to be to localhost 5010. Just go ahead and triple check it. Yes, it's 5010. The AWS region is US East 2, if I'm not mistaken, or East 1. Wonderful. Then I need to specify the AWS account ID, the DB user name, which will be reddit-ish@yahoo.com. Then I need to specify the user pool ID. The ID of my user pool is this value without HTTPS in there. The identity pool ID is this value that we conveniently saved earlier. And then I need to also specify the client ID and client secret. Perfect. Now that we have completed the steps, let me create a new set of credentials here. I'll just call it Redshift with Cognito credentials and click Save. So now I configured my created a new connection to my Redshift instance, and I selected AWS with IAM with identity pool as authentication method. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to now try and test the connection. So I'm clicking the test connection. You can see the authorization has been granted. Okay, and it says SSL option is required. Okay, obviously I did not enable SSL. So I'll set SSL to required, save it. And once again, perform the test. See, we're getting this message. The testing is in progress. And yes, the connection has succeeded. Wonderful. If I click connect now, Within a few seconds, I should see the Visual Query Builder. I'm not sure if actually the table has any, the database has any data, because this is just like a dummy Redshift instance that I deployed for the purposes of this demo. But you can see that the Visual Query Builder is actually displaying and loading the data. So this is how you can leverage AWS Cognito to securely access your Redshift and S3 data. And this is how you can do this from Alteryx Designer as well. If you have any questions about configurations or any suggestions to some of the upcoming videos, please leave your comments below this video. Otherwise, stay tuned, subscribe for the channel, and I'll see you in the next videos.